I'm a newbie to One Piece, I've never watched the anime. Now I'm in my 30s, I'm reading the whole thing. So while I make my way through this gargantuan task, I thought it would be fun or useful, pointless or dumb to rank every volume as I go, after every 5 or so volumes. So here we are, part 1 of a million. And for books that are nearly 30 years old, I guess, there will be spoilers from this point on. In 5th place, volume 4. I still enjoyed this one, but it felt the most shonen battle manga-y of all these first 5 volumes, with the whole volume pretty much being the crew trying to stop the Black Cat pirates from making it to the village. In 4th place, volume 5. The Black Cat fight wraps up, Usopp joins the crew and disbands his little group of kiddies, and then they move on to meet Sanji. Slight criticism, it did feel like 100 new characters were introduced in quick succession though. In 3rd place, volume 3. The resolution of the Buggy the Clown fight, a little adventure meeting Gaimon, a little weirdo who lives in a chest, and then meeting Usopp and the Black Cats. In 2nd place is volume 2. This volume is mainly just the fight against Buggy, but it does feature the dog Chow Chow and his backstory, and it's very reminiscent of Hachiko, the real-life dog. I kind of wish that Chow Chow joined the crew, and we'll probably read another 100 volumes just to see if he ever does. And in 1st place is volume 1. It seems obvious, but I love the intro of Monkey as a kid, the fights being a chapter or 2 long and not volumes long, Zolo joining, Nami sort of joining, and the feeling of the adventure just getting going. See where parts 6 to 10 slot in the next one. And now it's time to continue the insanity that is ranking every volume of One Piece. I decided to only rank 3 volumes this time, 6, 7 and 8, because there will be 3 left afterwards before the end of the first arc, East Blue. First up, in last place, volume 6. I liked the reintroduction of Luffy as a chore boy, and Don Krieg, the biggest bad yet, appearing so weak initially, the moral quandary that the crew face with feeding the near-dead pirates, knowing they'll just bounce back and raid them. Nami leaves and abandons the crew. Hawkeye appears out of nowhere for a fight with Zolo, but I like how Oda has dropped in these little nuggets of storylines into the current story to be picked up somewhere else down the line. Next up is Volume 8. This is where Don Krieg's battle with Luffy comes to fruition, and Luffy gets messed up more than we've ever seen before, but luckily the fight doesn't outstay its welcome. And then we move on to meeting the new bad, Sawtooth Arlong and his crew, but not before the world opens up in a very manga fashion, and Hawkeye is revealed as one of 7 warlords of the sea who are in themselves one of the 3 great powers. And then they up the ante even more by saying that Don Krieg is just a pussycat. I also enjoy how it seems to split the crew, with Usopp and Zolo investigating Nami's betrayal without Luffy and Sanji. So Volume 7 is my top pick this time. Sanji's backstory and the reveal that Chef Zeph gave Sanji all the food when they were stranded, had to resort to eating his own leg to survive. And the way they make Don Krieg actually seem like an evil threat when he uses the poisonous gas on his old first mate. It's these emotional moments that really stand out. So here's how they all stack up so far. Let us know what you think, and we will finish East Blue next time. I've given myself the insane task that's ranking every volume of the manga One Piece. This time it's the end of the first arc. We made it! So we've got 3 volumes of East Blue to cover here. In 3rd place is Volume 10. Something I've actually been waiting to come up since Volume 1 is water actually posing a threat to Luffy, and that actually does happen in this volume when Sawtooth Arlong gives him the old mafia concrete boots treatment. I really like this moment where my favourite character so far, Usopp, is trying to work out a way to come across like he really made a difference in the fight, and then realises he's just ashamed of himself. In 2nd place is Volume 11. I'm generally less of a fan of the volumes that are purely combat focused, and I thought that that was what this finale would be, but I was actually really wrong. There's emotional moments like when Nami finally becomes a member of the team, and when Nami gets a tattoo of Pinwheel in honour of Genzo, and I did kind of wonder what the Pinwheel was about beforehand. And then onwards, and we see these wanted posters of all the villains so far, and Luffy. Briefly we get to see Shanks again, and then there's a nice change of pace for a quick shopping trip for some equipment and maybe a little bit of fan service. And finally, we catch up on some old characters like Lady Alvida, who's changed somewhat, and Buggy, and some new characters. And in 1st place, Volume 9, the one with all the Nami grief. We see her stab Usopp to protect him from the fishmen, and then it's later revealed that she actually stabbed herself. We get backstory of Nami's childhood, and then we get backstory within a backstory about how her adoptive mother rescued her. And after this "I hate you, Mum" moment, her mum goes and gets herself killed purely because she can't lie and say she doesn't have children, even at gunpoint. And after we read through all this baggage and heartache, Nami finally asks for help. So the East Blue arc of the manga ends with a couple of bangers and puts itself in 2nd and 3rd space for me. And that's the end of the first arc, so let me know if it just keeps getting better. I've given myself the insane task that is ranking every volume of the manga One Piece. It's the start of the new saga, Baroque works, and this is volume 12. So the first thing that happens is Buggy turns himself into a car, obviously. But Smoker immediately puts the kibosh on that about a page later, so I don't really know where they were going with that. Then Oda drops a mysterious new character who saves Luffy, and then onwards to the Grand Line. I always love these moments where we see the world of One Piece through these explanatory diagrams and maps. And then after a bumpy introduction, we meet a man with a flower on his head who is in love with a whale, obviously. And it turns out to be a depressing tale of an animal who's desperately waiting for his owner to return. And that would pull at my heartstrings a little bit more if that hadn't already been done in Volume 2 with the dog Chow Chow. Anyway, Luffy fixes the issue with the whale that the man with the flower on his head couldn't fix for 50 years by plunging the mast of the ship into the whale's face. I gotta say, I don't really get the logic, but the whale does. And with that resolved, we move on to a new locale, Whiskey Peak. And we meet these new characters, two of whom are a little bit goofy. They kind of remind me of Team Rocket. I do really like this page where all of the crew members indulge their vices in one way or another, getting drunk, overeating, etc. Overall, I did enjoy this volume, but I've got to say, I think it's going to be at the bottom of the table for me so far. Anyway, follow me for more manga and One Piece. One Piece, back to ranking it all. Volume 13 now, and let's see if it improves, because Baroque works so far, Volume 12 being my least favourite. Firstly, I love Fat Luffy. So while Zolo are destroying all these characters, Fat Luffy wakes up from a food coma and just trundles in. And Mr. 5 has explosive bogeys, obviously. Then Nami seems like a bit of a... Probably the best part for me of this volume is when Fat Luffy accidentally challenges Zoro to a fight. And he even says, die! He doesn't even usually say things that strong to his enemies. This woman shows up and tells the crew where to go, and Luffy says no. And then they get to a new island with dinosaurs and giant Vikings locked in an eternal duel. Now, if you're starting to think that this volume might be a bit all over the place, suddenly the new bad shows up, number 3, and it looks as if he might be pretty proud of his rank. And the volume closes out with the bad guys tainting the Vikings' ale, and when it blows up inside of him, he turns on Luffy and the crew. So I have to say, every volume of One Piece so far I've enjoyed, but I will say that Baroque work so far is coming in at the bottom of the table, although this one is slightly better than the last. One Piece, is it improving? Back to ranking it all. Baroque Works has not been as enjoyable for me so far. It's still good though. So is this next volume about to climb up the rankings a little bit for me? So Mr. Free and the crew have a house made of wax in the jungle. And, oh wait a minute. Mr. Free drinks English tea. So England exists in the world of One Piece. That means I can't wait for Luffy to interact with some roadmen later on. Anyway, Mr. Free's evil working plan is to cash in on the bounty on the 2 Vikings. One of the Vikings has been spiked, but even so he's obliged to carry on with his eternal duel with his Viking buddy. And inevitably the spiked Viking loses the battle, and this bit's quite moving because the winning Viking becomes distraught, especially after he realises that his friend was spiked. This really upsets Usopp, who's obsessed with bravery and honour, even though he has none. Now, you can never accuse Oda of being unoriginal, because this next part includes Mr. Free creating a giant spinning jack-o'-lantern made of wax that revolves, spraying wax out and encasing and immobilising all of the crew. And here, Usopp does actually save the day by firebombing Luffy, burning off all his clothes so that the little girl can't paint symbols on his clothes anymore. And after the day is won, Sanji, who's just been sipping tea, gets a phone call from the next big bad, Mr. Zero. So a slight improvement here, here's the table, but Baroque Works does still come in at the bottom, but this is the best one of the last 3. One Piece, and this time, hopefully, Volume 15 is going to make One Piece great again. Baroque Works has been gradually getting better, hopefully it carries on. So firstly, Mr. Zero drip feeds his plan mistakenly over the phone to Sanji. But unbeknownst to everyone, Smoker intercepts the call. And then the Straw Hats leave the island and get eaten by a giant fancy goldfish, which they soon after blast out of the back of. So Nami is sick, and I love this moment because the boys know nothing about how to treat her, or even sickness in general, or the gravity of the situation. And then new island and new good guy. So in this new village, there's one medicine practitioner, but she lives up a mountain. So Sanji and Luffy take Nami on their backs up the mountain to find her. And peak One Piece here, this moment of Sanji and Luffy just bonding as they travel up the mountain. Unfortunately, what the boys don't know is the witch and her new reindeer friend are in another village. The boys are attacked by lapins, presumably French, giant bear rabbits. Sanji explains that every jolt could kill Nami, so in a great moment of character growth, Luffy finally realises he can't fight his way out of every problem. So now the lapins create an avalanche, the boys are racing up a mountain to find a witch who isn't there, Usopp and Vivi are lost, Walpole's invading, Dalton's a bison whose only weakness is being shot, and then he's shot. Mr. Two's on his way, and it seems so is Smoker. The stakes are high, there's a lot of storylines coming together, it's a big improvement, and I've got to say, it leaves all of the rest of the Baroque works in the dust. Welcome back to ranking all of One Piece, and this one is an emotional roller coaster. It's volume 16. Snowball chase sequence, and in the wake of the avalanche, Luffy saves one of the French bear rabbits from being buried alive. Then Walpole and his cronies attack the boys, but due to Luffy not being able to fight back in order to protect Nami, they have to run, so luckily they're saved by the La Palme. So now Luffy has to climb a mountain carrying Sanji and Nami, but he's saved at the last minute by Chopper. And in this moment, Oda does what he does best with his rubbery character art when Usopp gets his face bent out of shape. And again, Oda masterfully depicts humorous body language in this moment where Chopper doesn't know how to peek properly. But despite Chopper's kawaii-ness, the boys want to eat him. Nami tries to recruit Chopper into the Straw Hats, but at this moment Walpole catches up with the gang. And as Luffy is about to punch Walpole, the story is frozen in place, and from this point on we get black panels, meaning backstory. Chopper was ostracized by reindeer and man, but a quack doctor, Dr. Hiruluk, rescued Chopper and took him in. Dr. Hiruluk raises a pirate flag with cherry blossoms on it to symbolize his mission to cure every disease known to man. A year goes by and Dr. Hiruluk throws Chopper out now that he's been healed. It's pretty heartbreaking. Turns out he's dying, and he doesn't want Chopper to see him before he's finished creating his miracle cure. After frantic research, Chopper finds a mushroom that he believes will cure Dr. Hiruluk and feeds him it. As the reader, we know a skull and crossbones means poison, but due to his master, Chopper believes that a skull and crossbones is emblematic of a miracle cure. And so, he has killed his master. And so the doctor sets off to use the last of his strength to save the other doctors from Walpole, but falls into Walpole's trap. But he's such a good bloke, he doesn't mind, he's just happy to know that the other doctors are safe. So he goes full-on Walter White mode and blows himself up. And of course, he doesn't forget to toast Chopper. Volume 16 has earned its place as the second best volume so far. Welcome back to ranking every volume of One Piece. It's volume 17 this time, and with volume 16 being the second best so far, let's find out if Oda continues with the hot streak. So Walpole wants a fight, but Chopper and the boys step in, and just when it seems like the fight might be over a bit prematurely, Walpole turns himself into a house. It's revealed that Walpole ate the Munch Munch fruit, which can turn himself into anything he eats, which in a way is the best devil power yet, because why not just eat a nuke and hydrogen bomb Luffy to death? Soon after, Luffy stops Walpole from destroying the flag, which meant so much to Chopper. It's revealed that Chopper is a Zoan type of devil fruit eater, and I didn't even realise that there were types. And this means that Chopper has 3 types of transformation, but it's later revealed that he actually has 7. And on the topic of transformations, Walpole slims down by eating himself. Oda does love a bit of cannibalism. Remember Chef Zeph? Chopper still doesn't know how to peek, and that admittedly did still make me laugh. And then Luffy formally asks Chopper to join the crew, well, as formally as Luffy ever is. Then, in an emotional goodbye, the witch displays Dr. Hiruluk's miracle and cherry blossoms seem to fall from the sky. After the Straw Hats leave the island, it is revealed that a character named Ace was looking for Luffy, and the witch says this, which is either some sort of D or D's nuts joke, or it means something that I don't know about yet. And so the crew celebrates with their new addition, and I don't know what this is. Is it breadsticks? Closing out this volume, we get a full breakdown of all the members of Baroque works. So rankings-wise, this wasn't quite as effective as volume 16, just because it was more closing the book on Drum Island and setting up what's next. It puts itself in 8th place. Drug abuse, family trauma, women beating, this time in ranking all of One Piece. The crew have finally reached Alabasta, and there's a guy here asleep in his food with a typo tattoo on his arm. It's Ace. He seems cool and a little bit goofy, and Smoke is interested in him. But Luffy, on the hunt for food, bursts through the wall and interrupts this tense moment between the two of them. Meanwhile, the women buy some new clothes, and Sanji does the perving thing, which is getting a bit old. After Ace fights Smoker with fire, Luffy casually reveals that Ace is his brother, and that he's stronger than him, and he ate the devil fruit too. Then Ace catches up to them, perching on the side of the boat like a monkey. Ace reveals he's looking for the One Piece too on behalf of a pirate named Whitebeard, and he invites Luffy and his crew to join them, but Luffy declines and welcomes the competition. He gives Luffy a piece of paper and tells him to look after it. Ace then blows up 5 pursuing Baroque works, and the stakes and power level now seem a little bit more Dragon Ball Z than they did before. We briefly learn of the remaining Baroque works adversaries, but to be honest, I'm not that invested in these adversaries yet. Vivi explains how Sir Crocodile incited rebellion against her father the king by using dance powder, an invention that stills rainwater, creating famine and drought. The crew has an adventure through the desert where Luffy gets high on ayahuasca presumably. Then we meet Toto, who as a younger man, and remember black panels equals backstory, raised a son named Koza who befriended and saved a young Vivi. In modern day, Toto is distraught that his son leads the rebellion against the king. Meanwhile, the big bad reveals his big bad plan and then finishes off Mr. Free by sucking him dry. Then to round it all off, Luffy quits out of boredom, punches Vivi in the face, and persuades her to gun for the big bad instead of the rebels. When Luffy does things like this, you remember that he's not your average protagonist and there's shades of grey about him. Not that I condone punching women. This volume is packed with backstory, sob stories, shocking moments, Luffy's brother. It's a top fiver, and it comes in at 4th position. It's all out war! This time, in ranking every volume of the One Piece manga. We begin volume 19, and a boy named Kappa wants to join the rebel army, but Koza declines and declares that the war is about to begin. Fortunately, the king is just and won't attack the populace despite their stirrings. He and his asides receive the news from Karoo that Crocodile is the culprit, and you know Oda isn't messing around when he draws up the war plans for the 3 different competing factions. The Straw Hats accidentally stumble upon Smoker again and flee, splitting the group up. They make it to Crocodile's HQ, the casino Rain Dinners. The crew and Smoker get captured, and we learn that as kryptonite is to Superman, sea prism stones are to devil fruit users. And so Luffy can't just blast his way out of the cage and escape this one. Outside, the King's aide Pell uses Tweet powers to protect Vivi from the Baroque works. It's working until Miss All Sunday uses her sprout a limb from anywhere powers, which I've been told are very popular at Keys in a Bowl parties. There's a quick moment of levity here where Luffy does an impression of Sanji, and then Vivi goes for broke against Crocodile, and it doesn't work. Now, the King is missing, and we find him kicking Kappa, the little boy, and provoking Koza. Suddenly, a huge ship smashes into harbour, and we see the top dogs from Baroque works sowing chaos and havoc in the streets. The ship's hull is full of weapons, and Koza takes this as divine providence. Now he has the means and the motivation to attack and take the kingdom. And with the king MIA, the royal army is rallied to fight back. So now Vivi is forced to make a decision. Does she rush off to prevent the war between her peoples, or does she stick around and help save the Straw Hats? Luckily, Luffy simplifies the decision somewhat. Just when all seems lost, Sanji uses the same trick he pulled when they were on the island of Little Garden to lure Crocodile outside. And for the first time in quite a while, Sanji seems like quite a cool character and not just a perving, simping, one-note character. And to be fair, it was Chopper's plan too. The Straw Hats race off on a giant crab until Crocodile's claw comes out of nowhere and pulls Luffy back. And I can honestly say I'm hooked, just like Luffy was at the end of this volume. This is a very respectable 6th place for me. Welcome back to Ranking All of One Piece, and this time, what was Oda smoking? As usual, the first half of this episode will be us ranking and reviewing volume 20 of the One Piece manga, but the second half is where we'll be asking some serious questions about the rules of the One Piece world. So as we left off, the Straw Hats are racing away on a giant crab while Luffy gets pulled back by Crocodile into a fight. The fight that follows makes me really appreciate Crocodile as an antagonist. He just seems untouchable. It's the closest we've ever seen Luffy come to death when Crocodile sticks his giant hook right through Luffy's chest and drops him into a pit of sinking sand. Then Luffy is pulled from the pit by Miss All Sunday, who then reveals herself to be Nico Robin. And just like the witch on Drum Island, she mentions the D. D's nuts. She loves the D, etc. Turns out Karoo is the squadron leader of an elite group of ducks, and the Straw Hats use these ducks to race at Alabama, splitting the ambushing group of Baroque works. Vivi, who's riding Karoo, manages to break through, but Karoo gets beaten, trampled and shot. But now we come to some of those deep burning questions I mentioned. You see, as Sanji protects Vivi from Mr. 2 in a battle of legginess, Usopp and Chopper get embroiled in one of the strangest moments I have seen in all of 20 volumes of One Piece. Mr. 4, who's presumably a non-verbal savant, fights our heroes by firing explosive baseballs from his dog Lasso. Lasso is a dog, crossed with a gun, who sneezes projectiles due to it having a cold. I say it because no, this isn't a dog that ate the gun fruit, but a gun that ate the mut fruit, specifically the Dashan type. So now it's rapid fire question time. Do all inanimate objects in the world of One Piece have sentience? Did someone have to shove the devil fruit down a gun barrel? Are there so many devil fruits that even ones as niche as the mut fruit have to be subdivided into different breeds of dogs? Why not feed a devil fruit to everything you own? Beagle Bazooka, Doberman Door Hinge, Sugar Glider Stapler. Oh yeah, and that stuff was so weird that I forgot to mention Miss Merry Christmas is also a mole woman, and Usopp gets hit in the head with a metal baseball bat so many times we see multiple fractures. So presumably the rest of One Piece will just consist of the Straw Hats visiting Usopp in a care home and feeding him through a straw. Well, finally it's ranking time, and I can't say I'm not entertained, but what? This was all just a bit too silly for me, so it earns the spot just above the duller volumes of Baroque works in 17th. Also, French Bulldog Fleshlight. Nami steps up. Fighty McFight. I couldn't think of a better way to start this episode of ranking all of One Piece, but this is volume 21. Vivi's racing to Chaka, and Sanji and Mr. 2 are kicking each other, shouting out the names of each kick in that funny, kooky manga way we all know and love. Vivi's master plan is to destroy the palace to get everybody's attention. More kicking, more zany names, then Sanji wins. And now it's Nami versus Mrs. Doublefinger. We've never really seen Nami fight, and she doesn't have devil fruit powers, inhuman kicks, or free samurai swords, and now she's up against a particularly prickly customer. But, and black panels equals backstory, luckily Usopp made her a new weapon. But it plays up in typical Usopp fashion, and unfortunately Miss Doublefinger goes full T-1000 and kills Nami. Except she doesn't, because Nami's new weapon, the Weather Baton, lets her make mirages a la Dragon Ball Z after images. Miss Doublefinger's abilities remind me of Luffy in their stretchy versatility, but Nami does come out on top. Things look bad at the palace, and then Crocodile demand Pluton, which we've never heard of before. Pluton is effectively a WMD, and Crocodile blackmails Cobra into helping him obtain it. Crocodile reveals that in 30 minutes there's a giant cannonball on its way to destroy the two opposing armies. And that's why Crocodile is the best bad guy yet. Meanwhile, Zoro fights Mr. One, aka Swordy Armsman. He can't seem to slice into Mr. Swordy Armsman's steel-like body, but a brief black panel equals backstory moment reminds him that he could always just pick up a house and throw it at any adversary. Is it me, or did this guy just eat the throw fruit, specifically the house type? But then he goes all zen and remembers how to slice through steel, and then he does. And that's us done. And if you couldn't tell, this wasn't my favourite. If it wasn't for Crocodile and the development in his evil plan, this volume would mainly just be shonen-esque fights, and to be honest, that isn't my favourite aspect of One Piece. I'm actually going to put this volume of the One Piece manga one slot lower than last volume's weirdness, and that'll put it in 18th. Luffy gets mummified, ranking all of One Piece, and we are 22 volumes in, and now let's take a look at Chapter 1. Chapter 196:1. After Alabaster's elite guards unalive themselves trying to fight Crocodile, Chaka reveals that he ate the dogging fruit too. And so soon after I mused on French Bulldog fleshlights a few volumes ago, Crocodile reveals his manipulation of Koza and his rebels. Koza swallows his pride and attempts to stop the war, but is immediately gunned down by a member of Baroque Works hiding within the crowd, and this reignites the fighting. Crocodile takes a moment to relish Vivi's despondence before dropping her to her death, but Luffy, on Pell's back, saves her just in time. Luffy then proceeds to beat the sand out of Crocodile using an imaginative barrel of water hookup that he uses to moisten every blow. And as we cross over into chapter 200, we realise that Luffy doesn't like sand. It's coarse, rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. Their rematch is pretty cool, with the art nicely illustrating Luffy's stretchiness powers and Crocodile's sandiness and desertification powers. Thank you, GCSE Geography. And then Crocodile mummifies Luffy, which is pretty gruesome. So yeah, Luffy's dead. Anyway, Tashigi and the Navy get absolutely embarrassed by Nico Robin on their way to find the Poneglyph, which apparently reveals the location of Pluton. Luffy, who isn't dead, is in hot pursuit, but then he is a bit dead again. So Nico translates the hieroglyphs on the Poneglyph for Croc, but when he doesn't get the info he wants, he absolutely embarrasses Nico. Luffy, who isn't dead, is now using blood to moisten Crocodile. Gross. But as the mausoleum crumbles around them, Crocodile poisons Luffy. Up top, the Straw Hats and Vivi race to the clock tower where the cannon must be hidden. But then Pell gets shot down by a frog gun-wielding weirdo. Are we about to see more inanimate objects eating Zoan-type devil fruits? One volume left of this saga. I'm pumped, that was great. Volume 22 takes the 10th spot. It's the end of a saga, we've come so far! It's ranking all of One Piece, and this is volume 23. As the fight rages, these two frog gun-toting weirdos are about to fire the giant cannonball into the crowd of innocents. Then, in a manner similar to the fight scenes in Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, the Straw Hats manage to boost Vivi to the top of the clock tower, where she manages to cut the fuse in the nick of time. Except she doesn't, because it's a time bomb. All is lost. Except it isn't, because Pell carries the bomb off into the skyline like Batman from The Dark Knight Rises, unaliving himself. And this is perhaps a first for One Piece, no cheaping out. This character is thoroughly unalived, unlike Batman in The Dark Knight Rises. Luffy and Croc get aerial too, and a few gums later, and Luffy's the winner. Rain and peace at last, enjoy the petrichor. Hina, a new Navy character who seems more of a busybody, informs Smoker and Tashigi that they are to be awarded medals by the Navy, but they're just too cool for that. The crew is celebrating, but Cobra needs cancelling because he ogles Nami and Vivi in the baths. That's your daughter, man. Now, I read and reread this section because I wanted to be sure that I hadn't misunderstood anything. But even later on, when Vivi is changing and her maid is attacking everyone who tries to get into the room, who's this waiting outside with a big bump on his head? I kind of wish Crocodile had overthrown the Empire. New alliances have been made. Some old enemies have allied in the Navy under Hina, where the Straw Hats have re-befriended Mr. 2. Mr. 2 has saved their ship from the Navy and used his face-swapping abilities to mimic the Straw Hats and divert the Navy's attention. As the reader, we're baited into believing that Vivi's going to join the Straw Hats, but ultimately they bid a hurried goodbye. And that's the end of Baroque Works. Wow, so much to say. Volume 23 of One Piece takes the 4th spot. Hello everyone, thanks so much for watching and listening to me talk about One Piece for this long. And this is just the first two sagas. basically this is just a quick little message to ask you to subscribe and like and leave a comment if you want me to carry on and do the next 2 sagas and beyond. Thank you, bye.